Welcome back to day 2, where we talk about chapter 1 of the software testing strategies book. So the question is, where do you start? Well, I'll tell you where not to start, why we wanted to write a book. Over the years, more than one manager has told me software testing is pretty easy. So anybody can do it. Anybody reasonably intelligent is going to be able to figure it out. So we make sure they're a culture fit, or make sure they have whatever particular skill or domain the company was trying to develop at the time. No, that's not the case. Let's talk about a few fundamentally different ways to think about testing. So if I don't know anything about the software at all, I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to overwhelm it with data or standards that are not met to see it fail. When that happens, if I don't see the failures, I'll discover the basic flow of the functionality. I think when people say anybody can test, I mean the basic flows. You can click on it and kind of walk through it and make sure that it ties together. At the most basic, highest level, you demonstrate that it's possible that if everything is good, that it has the potential to work in at least one set of flows. That's pretty weak. So we've got the quick attacks, and then we've got the flow or state-based testing. And then you have the actual analysis of the independent requirements. So they'll have conditions. They'll say, only allow this thing to happen once, or if this thing happens more than 10 times, then there should be pagination and you can go first, next, last on it. Or these fields are sortable and that should be impacted by the pagination. By which I mean that the little things at the bottom, first, next, last, when you have too many rows on your screen. Right? There's the common failure modes of the application. So, and that changed. When we went from MS-DOS to Windows, all of a sudden in Windows, you could click things in an order differently than the programmers expected. That's called the event-driven paradigm. And you got defects. When we went from Windows to the web, we got an entirely different set of defects around that, such as what happens if I click the back button? Is it gonna work when I click the back button? And then when you go from the web to mobile, we start worrying about what happens if the internet service goes out while I'm doing the work. So on a laptop, you would just get an error message and be done. But with a native mobile app, you can have some amount of the software continuing to work while other things are broken. How do those interplay? And what happens when we're reliant on the Twitter API and Twitter is down the instant we press it? Should the whole thing crash? So I wasn't counting, but there's some number of possible areas we could find defects there. There's the quick attacks. There's the common failure modes of the platform. There's the common failure modes of the software domain we're building, which we find out by looking at the actual historical list of bugs and trying to figure out what broad common things happen frequently. And then there is the analysis of the business requirements, or Dr. Kainer called that domain analysis. So what the book actually does is it talks you through. You've actually got screen captures here, and it talks you through how to find the JavaScript and different possibilities of kinds of defects. Here you've got misrequirements, unintended interactions between two or more requirements, common failure modes of the platform, vague or unclear requirements, missed implicit requirements, and programmer error. Most of the time, the way we talk about defects is that it's only programmer error. It's such a limited view. And then, of course, we have part calc, and we talk about exploring that. Later on in the book, we're going to talk about how the software is becoming more mature. So the things that we were finding 10 years ago, validating an email address or validating a date, and it's open source code libraries for that. For the most part, our testing needs to shift. Um, and then we go into and we come up with, given the requirements, what are some basic test ideas to run. And when you run those few basic test ideas, what does that tell you? And then of course we build up a more complex piece of software over time, starting with just insurance, automobile insurance, and then we define all of the boundaries for that. And beyond the boundaries, we have the equivalence classes, and we do tight. We start with equivalence classes, then we do equivalence classes plus boundaries, then we add more scenarios, and we end up with decision trees. And you can do that in mind map software. We tell you how to do it. We talk about pairwise testing. When give an example of software that is used to limit the number. So these things multiply. 4 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these. 4, 16, 64, 256 combinations. If you get to 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, it's 10,000 combinations. So you can write software to test them all, which we'll talk about later. Or you can use a tool, like a pairwise testing tool, to reduce the number. And actually, a good pairwise tool, you can dial it up or down based on how much time you have to find the best 10 scenarios, the best 15, the best 50, the best 100. We talk about testing extract, transform, and load software. And we talk about the problem with the oracle, which is how do you know what the right answer should be? So I give an example of a monthly payment calculator. In order to do that, you have to build up your own comparison, which might be in Excel or might be in software. If you build up your own software, then you might want to do a random walk on it where you randomly generate input and calculate what you think the answer should be and then compare them. That's called a model-driven approach. And that's just chapter 1, folks. That's just chapter 1. I just covered chapter 1 really quick. I wanted to do it in less than 5 minutes. I did it in less than 8. And we're going to talk about chapter 2 tomorrow so you can make an informed decision. I hope you'll consider the book. Thanks for listening.